So in this video we are going to be looking at the President of India. The President occupies a very unique position in the Indian system of government. The President in the Indian parliamentary system of government is the head of the state. The President occupies the first place in the list of presidents. So there is a list of presidents that says who occupies the highest office in the state, and there is also an entire list. For example, the president is followed by somebody else and so on. The vice president follows the president in the order of precedence. The prime minister is third in the list and is the head of the government. So please remember this, that the president is the head of the state while the prime minister is the head of the government. These three together, that is the president, vice president and the prime minister, together with the council of ministers and the attorney general of India, make up the executive wing of the union government. Now we'll just look at a refresher. We have previously seen that there are three important wings to our political system, namely the executive, the legislative and the judiciary. The executive executes the policy decisions. The legislature makes laws or frames laws, that is the parliament, for example, is the legislature, it frames laws. Then we have the judiciary, which adjudicates the correctness of the laws and looks into these disputes. The union executive hence contains the following members. The first one is the President of India, the second one is the Vice President of India, who is also the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, and then we have the Prime Minister, then we have the Council of Ministers, then we have the Attorney General of India. Please do not get confused whenever I say Cabinet Minister and Union Council of Ministers. They are both different. The Cabinet is a small group of ministers within the Council of Ministers. However, the executive contains the whole Union Council of Ministers. So the President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Union Council of Ministers and the Attorney General of India together make up the Union Executive. The Part 5 of the Indian Constitution, that is from Articles 52 through to Article 78 of the Indian Constitution, deals with the Union Executive. First we will look at the President, then we will look at the Vice President, then we will look at the Prime Minister, and then we will look at the Union Council of Ministers, and finally we will look at the constitutional positions as they go on. So first we will look at President, and we will look at the qualifications necessary for election as President. Article 58 of the Constitution lays down the criteria for the qualifications of the President. It is as below. Article 58 says that no person shall be eligible for election as President unless he is a citizen of India, unless he has completed 35 years of age, and he is qualified for election as a member of the House of the People, that is the Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha is also called as the House of the People. So the person who is willing to be elected as a president or who wants to be elected as a president should be at least 35 years of age, he should be a citizen of India, and he should be qualified for election as a member of the House of the People. Such a person who wants to be a president, he shall not be eligible for election as president if he holds any office of profit under the government of India or the government of any state or under any local or other authority subject to the control of any of the said governments. So a person who wants to be a president cannot be president if he holds any office of profit under the union government, state governments or even the local governments. So he can hold no office of profit. For the purposes of this article, that is Article 58, that is qualifications of the President, a person shall not be deemed to hold any office of property by reason only that he is the President or Vice President of the Union or the Governor of any state or is a minister either of the Union or any state. What does this mean? This means that, let's say there is an incumbent president, you have been a president for 5 years and you are up for re-election. That is possible. If you are already a president, it is not deemed to be an office of profit. If you are already a vice president, it is not an office of profit. If you are a governor, that is not an office of profit. If you are already a minister either in the union or state governments, it does not mean it is an office of profit. All of these are not office of profits. So all of these people can apply to become the president if they also qualify with the other qualifications. So for election, a candidate has to first be nominated. So not anybody can just go and get into an election of the President of India. So for election, a candidate has to be first nominated. By whom is he nominated? He has to be nominated by at least 50 electors as proposers and another 50 electors as seconders. A security deposit of 15,000 is also to be made with the RBI in case of failure of the candidate to secure at least 1/6 of the vote. He or she loses the deposit. Now, who nominates the president? This is the question. We have already seen that there needs to be 50 proposers and 50 seconders. But who nominates the president? We will come to that in a moment when we look into the election of the president. So if there is any doubt regarding the election of the president, the Supreme Court inquires into it and it passes a judgment. So the judgment of the Supreme Court is final. I repeat, if there is any doubt regarding the election of the president, be it procedure or be it counting or anything, the Supreme Court inquires into it and it passes a judgment, and the decision of the Supreme Court is final and there is no appeals available. So in case the election of a president is declared void, then his acts prior to the election being declared void are not nullified and continue to remain in force. What does this mean? This means that even if a president's election is declared to be void, so till that time that his election is declared void, whatever acts or decisions that he has taken continue to remain in force unless and until the new president decides to repeal them. So let's say before the president's election has been deemed void by the Supreme Court, the president has gone and signed a declaration of national emergency. This will still be valid even though the president's election has been declared void. The national emergency will continue to remain in force. So any acts done prior to the election being declared void are not nullified and they will continue to remain in force. The election of a president cannot be challenged on the grounds that the electoral college was incomplete. That is, if any of the members of the electoral college was unable to vote or was absent, then the election of a president cannot be challenged. The election will still stand. So one thing that we know is the president is indirectly elected by both the houses of the parliament. So this is the kind of indirect elections. The question then arises that why was indirect election chosen instead of direct election for the president? This question was also considerably debated in the Constituent Assembly. Let us look at the reason. The first point, limited resources of the state. Direct elections eat up into a state's resources, both human and financial. Just think about the elections to the Lok Sabha. Just look at what kind of resources are being used, how many people get into campaigning, what are the financial resources that are going into it, just the kind of canvassing that happens. So direct elections eat up into a state's resources, both human and financial, because it is the state government and the union government's employees who act as electoral officers. So a poor state like India can ill afford elections when the need for it is not all too pressing. So the president's election is not a very pressing need that he has to be elected directly by the people, because he is just the head of the state. He is not the head of the government. Even the president's powers are limited as compared to that of the prime minister. Of course, the president's powers are very vast, but compared to the prime minister, his powers are quite minimal. The president is the head of the state. However, in reality, his powers are limited. He acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. So the President acts only upon the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. However, he has some military and discretionary powers also that we will look at later, but in general working of the country, the President only acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Hence, to elect an almost nominal head of state with limited powers would seem a wasteful exercise, especially with direct elections. Hence, indirect election of the president through the elected representatives of the people offers legitimacy, and it is less stressful on the limited resources of the state. The second reason is that the issue of legitimacy and subversion of duties and roles. Were the president to be directly elected, he would be an elected head of the state. The prime minister is only the head of the government. The president will naturally feel that he can not only take executive decisions of his own free will, but even override the decision of the prime minister, who is the head of the council of ministers, which means he is the head of the government. So clearly, if both the prime minister and the president are directly elected by the people, then there is a problem of legitimacy. Even the president will begin to feel that because he is directly elected by the people, even he can take executive decisions. Then if the president starts taking executive decisions of his own free will and not on the aid and advice that is given to him by the prime minister, who is the head of the council of ministers, then there will become a huge problem. So in a parliamentary system and in a cabinet system of government, the consequences of such problems can be quite terrible and might even lead to a constitutional deadlock. The makers of the constitution, that is the Constituent Assembly, foresaw this. They saw that if both of them are directly elected by the people, then there can be a constitutional deadlock. Hence, when there is only one such directly elected leader, that is the prime minister, then the question of true representative of people's will is never called into question, and such problems can be avoided. So the prime minister is the true representative of people's will, because he is the head of the government. He has the majority in the Lok Sabha. So the prime minister is a true representative of people's will. The president is the head of the state. So if the president is indirectly elected, then the true custodian of the people's will never be questioned. The third point, the president is to be distanced from party politics and party loyalties. This is very important. He is the president of India. He is not the president of any particular party. Let's say now the BJP is in power and Ramnath Kovind is the president of India. You cannot look at Ramnath Kovind as a BJP person, or you cannot look at him as a Congress person, or you cannot look at him as a person of any political party. He is the president of India. He is not the president of BJP. He is not the president of the government. He is the president of the entire country. So the president is to be neutral. He is to be distanced from party politics and party loyalties. A president campaigning will necessarily have to be from some party to afford the expenses of elections, and he will have to be loyal to that party. The president of India is expected to be free from such biases, and he is to be a figurehead of integrity, honesty and sincerity. He is considered to be above party politics. This concludes this video. In the next video, we will look at the conditions of the president's office, and we will look at Article 59. Thank you.